I'm Michael, and I'm accompanied by Sarah and Maureen. I hope you guys are all staying sane and alive during these strange quarantine times. I wanted to thank you for joining us in this teaching. Happy belated Earth Day, happy belated Arbor Day. We're looking forward to teaching you guys a little something that you might be able to take along the road and help benefit your own lives. We decided to focus on sustainable eating, the issues behind it, benefits with it, and how it can really help you out. Overall, highlighting the increasing impact on the environment from the food we eat and how it adds to climate change has begun to stand out as a focal point in many lives and communities around our planet. In a world where food can come from thousands of miles away and individually wrapped is a household icon, what does the phrase sustainable eating even mean? So according to the 1987 United Nations Brundtland Commission definition, sustainability means meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So the concept of sustainable eating means holding each other accountable. It means taking it upon ourselves to purchase and consume food in a manner that is healthy for ourselves and simultaneously being healthy for the planet. It is about closing the system and creating a cycle that balances out the giving and receiving we implement on our environment. Simply stated, sustainable eating means taking responsibility and doing our part to take back control of our degrading environment. So where do we start? So I chose to focus on the pillar of locally sourced foods and local eating. There's a lot of areas that go into this, but basically eating locally sourced food has an extremely positive impact on our environment and on our local economy. It also has immense benefits for the consumer, for the grower, and for the overall community. Choosing to do so is extremely important because the distance that food has to travel from farm to plate is probably the most important factor in determining a food's ultimate carbon footprint. We have all heard of the farmer's market and the community crop trades. We have all seen locally sourced stamps that is branded on several products at the grocery stores. We've all been witness to a community engaged food co-op. But what are the true benefits of utilizing these resources? Sharing the reasoning as to why we should take an advantageous effort to purchase and consume locally sourced foods is the first pillar of sustainable eating. Where you source your food truly does matter, guys. Local food is actually healthier for you. It's much fresher and it tastes a lot better. All of these are because the food spends less time in transit from farm to plate, thus it maintains its nutrients and there's not as much spoilage. Also, eating local food is eating seasonal food. So even though we all wish blueberries were grown year-round in our area, Michiana, we know that's not the case. So when you purchase blueberries in the middle of winter, that's just adding to an increasing carbon footprint. More resources go into these blueberries, they're traveled further. It's just overall not a good system. Another benefit of buying locally grown foods is the benefit of community involvement. I myself am a huge advocate for community engagement and involvement. Local foods and local food resources constantly connect people and they create a much more vibrant community. Consumers who eat the local food are able to meet and get to know the farmers and the food producers who make their food and vice versa. Building this sense of trust and relationship with their local farmers and community is the strongest way to get the best and freshest foods possible. So overall, choose to purchase local, utilize your local co-ops, your farmers markets, your local farmer businesses. It boosts your local economy, it influences job growth, economic growth, and overall it makes a better, stronger community. On to Maureen.
All right. Thank you, Michael. Okay, so I chose to focus on what a carbon footprint is and also meat and dairy and processed food consumption. So we talk a lot about carbon footprint, but what a carbon footprint actually is the amount of carbon dioxide and other carbon compounds emitted due to the consumption of fossil fuels. So simply put, your everyday choices matter when it comes to the health of the planet. You contribute to your carbon footprint in various ways, from driving, shopping, to how you eat. Your diet is a great place to start when reducing your carbon footprint because what you eat can contribute to a lot of processes that create carbon, greenhouse gas emissions, waste, and water usage. The average American diet is high in processed foods, meat, and dairy. And shockingly, if everyone ate the way Americans do, fossil fuel would be gone in 7 years. When it comes to greenhouse gases, the agricultural sector is the biggest contributor at around 20% because of all the methane, CO2, and nitrous oxide created by this sector. Eating heavily processed foods like cereal, for example, is burning like a half a gallon of gas. The energy embedded in these types of foods comes from having to further process the grains in order to make them able to be eaten. Eating higher on the food chain is even worse. Looking at this in terms of calories, there are around 68 calories of fossil fuel used to make 1 calorie of pork. A pig uses most of its energy to stay alive, and only a fraction of that energy is in the parts that we eat. However, when we eat fresh foods like fruits and vegetables, we are able to consume all of its caloric energy. A sustainable low carbon diet can still include meat and dairy and processed foods, but in moderation. So when you're shopping and you choose to buy foods like that, just make sure that you're taking a look at the label and making sure if at all possible you could get it locally or free range or grass fed. And whenever you can, to avoid meats like lamb, beef, and pork, which are the highest carbon foods. And also consider implementing a meatless Monday or doing a vegan day just once a week. That makes a huge difference. And I think that most people are able to do that no matter what their diet. And also, you can keep watching and learning about sustainable ways of shopping. And that's all for me. I'll kick it over to Sarah about food waste.
All right, thank you. So food waste is another issue in the way of unsustainable eating and cooking habits that many people probably participate in, likely without ever even realizing the negative impacts that it has on our planet. So food waste is one of those multifaceted issues that really shows the complexities behind our food waste system and how we can work together to improve it. So just to start with some baseline data about food waste, according to moveforhunger.org, 40% of all the food produced in the United States ends up going to waste. If 40% of all food production wasn't shocking enough, our worldandData.org explains that the world population uses approximately 50% of total habitable land for agricultural purposes alone. The same site also shared that food and agriculture are the largest consumer of water on the planet, as 70% of the fresh water found on Earth was used for agricultural needs in 2014. As well as that, according to foodprint.org, in 2018, the agricultural sector accounted for 10% of all energy consumed, landing at about 10 quadrillion British thermal units. So water, land, and energy, three of our most valuable resources, are being used and ultimately just going to waste when the food itself gets wasted. Not only are we wasting these valuable resources, but we're adding to global greenhouse gas emissions by our food waste as well. The United Nations Food and Agricultural Organization suggested that the carbon footprint of food waste made up nearly 7% of all global greenhouse gas emissions in 2013. That means that 7% of GHGs are being emitted without any benefit to human life at all. It's just from the waste that we produce. So with all this data in mind, it's definitely a lot to think about, but it's clear why we have to start seeking out solutions. These solutions will only really be beneficial if enough people support and advocate for them. So raising awareness on the issue and talking about it like we are today is a solution in and of itself. Another solution is eliminating food waste in your daily life by shopping for only what you know you're going to eat. A creative way to do this is by meal planning breakfast, lunch, and dinner for a couple days at a time, and only going to the store for just a couple days at a time. So this way you won't have to really worry about any food going expired in between trips to the store and losing out on that food. Another solution is to utilize any food scraps or ingredients that can be turned into leftovers. Finding creative ways to use leftovers, like making a whole meal out of the week's leftovers from dinner is a fun way of limiting your food waste at home and promoting more sustainable eating habits as well. Storing food correctly and learning the difference between the sell by, best by, and use by dates are also really important steps to eliminating food waste. The one that you should actually be paying attention to for expired food is the use by date. However, many products are still edible after this date. They just won't be at their best quality, but that doesn't mean that they belong in the trash.
All right, guys. So we know that may have been a lot of information to retain. With it's a long spiel, but let's go give you a basic overview of the three pillars we spoke about. One was eating local, so shop your farmers markets or co-ops. Be aware of where your food is coming from. It's very, very important. Number two is limit your high carbon and resource intensive foods. So eat mostly foods with short ingredient lists. Avoid the highly processed foods. Cut back on meat and dairy. Make as much food at home as you can. And the third one is mitigating or eliminating food waste as much as possible. Buy only what you really need for your household. Use your leftovers, store your foods properly, and definitely avoid foods with excess packaging and excess plastics and all of that. But overall, on behalf of myself and Sarah and Maureen, we definitely like to thank you guys for coming out and watching our teaching. We hope you learn something from it and get to walk away with some added knowledge to put in your book.
And thank you, everybody. We appreciate you watching.
Yeah, thanks everyone.